normal boarding line at a West Coast airport turns ugly fast. A well-dressed woman demands a little girl hand over her paid priority boarding pass, like it's hers by default. And the gate staff doesn't check the receipt, they check who's easier to push. One quiet for the sake of time is all it takes to rewrite a kid's place in the world. The West Coast terminal was a familiar kind of chaos. Rolling suitcases thumping over tile, boarding announcements echoing off glass, the constant, restless shuffle of people trying to be on time for their own lives. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the runway looked like a moving painting. Service trucks gliding past, jet bridges inching into place, planes waiting their turn like huge, patient animals. For Dr. Amelia Carter, the noise was just weather, background, something you move through. Her attention was on one small thing. The small hand tucked in hers. Lila Monroe sat beside her in the gate area, legs swinging just above the floor, clutching a phone in both hands like it was something precious. On the screen was their boarding pass, bright, official, hard to argue with. And there, in bold letters, was the reason Amelia had paid extra: priority boarding. Not because Amelia needed to feel important, because Lila needed to feel safe. Lila tilted her head toward the window, eyes wide, tracking a baggage cart as it zigzagged under a plane's wing. She looked up at Amelia with that electric, innocent excitement kids get when the world feels big and friendly instead of loud and sharp. "Are we really going first?" Lila asked. Amelia smiled. Not a big smile, a soft one. The kind that says, "Yes, and I meant it." "Yes," she said, "we're going first." Lila's shoulders lifted like she'd been handed a medal. She leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret with the universe. "Then I get to pick," she whispered. Amelia knew what she meant. Not just a seat, not just a spot in a line. The feeling of being allowed. The feeling that you belong in the front of something without having to apologize for it. "That's the plan," Amelia said gently. "We'll take our time. No rushing, no pushing." Because that was the whole point. Amelia wasn't the type to fight strangers in public. She didn't crave confrontation. In her world, the loudest person was rarely the smartest person, and the person with the most power was the one who stayed steady when everyone else lost their head. She'd built a life around that steadiness. She also knew something most people learn the hard way. Airports don't care if you're a good person. Airports reward whoever creates the biggest problem. That was why she'd planned this trip like a procedure. Everything confirmed, everything paid, everything timed. They weren't traveling for glamour. They were traveling because Lila had been counting down the days on a little calendar Amelia kept on the fridge. Because there was family waiting. Because there was a promise Amelia had made. This time, we're doing it right. Calm, safe, no surprises. Lila shifted in her seat and scrunched her nose. "Is it going to be loud when we take off?" she asked. "A little," Amelia admitted, keeping her voice warm and low. "But it's loud like a big truck passing by. It doesn't mean anything bad is happening." Lila nodded, but her fingers tightened around the phone. Amelia noticed. Of course she did. She didn't miss small signs. Not in her work, not in her life. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a pair of kid-sized headphones, the kind that softened the world without shutting it out completely. "Here," she said, "just in case." Lila's face brightened. "You remembered." "I remember what matters," Amelia replied. And that right there, if you want to know what real luxury is, it isn't champagne in a lounge or someone calling you ma'am with a practiced smile. It's a grown-up who remembers what scares you. It's a plan that makes you feel held together instead of pulled apart. It's a child sitting in a crowded place and still feeling like she has room. A boarding announcement crackled overhead, the kind of robotic voice that turned people into a herd. Priority boarding will begin shortly. Lila sat up straighter. She looked around at the line forming, at the adults shifting and inching forward like the first few steps would change the laws of time. Then she looked back at Amelia, eyes shining. "We're gonna be okay, right?" she asked, trying to sound brave. Amelia squeezed her hand once, firm, certain. "We're going to be okay," she said. "We're going to do this the right way." And she believed it, because when you pay for something fair and simple, when you follow the rules, when you show up prepared, you expect the world to meet you with the same basic respect. Amelia didn't know yet that, in a matter of minutes, someone would test that belief. Not with a shout, not with a fist, but with a smile that said, "I can take this from you, and no one will stop me." And in a place like an airport, where keeping things moving is treated like a virtue, that kind of smile can be more dangerous than anger. Priority boarding began the way it always begins, like a slow-moving tide. People rose from their seats, adjusted their bags, and formed a line that was less organized and more hopeful. The kind of line where everyone pretends they don't care, while quietly caring a lot. Amelia stood with Lila just behind the sign, not pushing, not cutting. Exactly where their pass said they belonged. Lila's fingers tightened around the phone. Her eyes flicked from the boarding scanner to the jet bridge entrance, then back to Amelia, like she was checking whether the world was still safe. "It's okay," Amelia murmured. "We're right on time." And then a new sound cut through the usual airport noise. A sharp heel click. Confident, deliberate. Like someone who expected the floor to move out of her way. Evelyn Brooks stepped into the frame of the moment as if she'd rehearsed it. She was impeccably styled in that expensive, effortless way that never looks wrinkled under fluorescent lights. Her hair was set. Her jewelry didn't jingle, it announced. And beside her was Noah, about 10, holding a tablet with the bored expression of a child who'd never once been told, "No." Evelyn didn't glance at the sign. She didn't check the line. She didn't ask. She looked straight at Lila's phone, then at Amelia's face, and smiled like she was doing them a favor. "Oh, good," she said, voice bright and careless. "You can just hand that priority pass over." It wasn't phrased like a request. It was a rearranging of reality. Amelia blinked once, slow and controlled, the way a person does when they're trying to confirm they heard correctly. "I'm sorry?" she said. Evelyn's smile widened, the way it does when someone thinks you're playing dumb on purpose. "My son needs to board early," she said lightly. "He gets anxious if he's not settled. And honestly, it'll make everything smoother if you just let us go first." Noah didn't look up from his screen. He didn't have to. He'd grown up in a world where his mother did the looking for him. Amelia kept her voice even, professional, calm. "We paid for priority," she said. "It's on our boarding pass." Evelyn gave a tiny laugh, the kind that says, "That's adorable." "It's one pass," she replied. "She's a child. She'll be fine waiting. We're not trying to make a big deal out of this." That sentence was a classic, a weapon disguised as manners. Because we're not trying to make a big deal usually means you're about to be punished if you don't comply quietly. Lila shifted closer to Amelia. Her excitement had drained into something smaller, watchful. Amelia felt the first spark of heat in her chest. Not rage, not yet. Something colder. The awareness that this wasn't about timing. It was about permission. "Ma'am," Amelia said, still steady, "the policy is clear. Priority is purchased.
We're using what we purchased." Evelyn's expression changed, just a fraction. The smile stayed, but the warmth left. She turned her head, scanning for staff the way a person scans for a manager at a restaurant. And she found one. Tina Lawson. Tina was the gate supervisor, identifiable by her headset and that tight, efficient posture of someone whose job is basically to keep 100 tiny disasters from becoming one big one.
She had a clipboard in one hand, a scanner in the other, and the faintly exhausted eyes of a woman who'd already put out 3 fires that morning. Evelyn lifted her hand slightly, not a wave, a signal.
"Excuse me," she called. "Hi, we have a situation."
That word, situation, has ended more arguments than any truth ever has. Because the moment you label something a situation, the goal becomes resolve it, quickly, quietly, efficiently. Not necessarily correctly. Tina approached with a practiced, polite face.
"What seems to be the issue?" she asked.
Evelyn stepped into the role of wronged customer like she'd been born in it.
"My son needs to board first," she said. "He's nervous, and we always do early boarding, but they're refusing to cooperate, and we're going to hold up the whole line."
Amelia noticed something immediately. Evelyn didn't say, "I want their pass." She said, "They're refusing." She framed herself as reasonable and framed Amelia as the problem. That's how people win without facts. Tina's gaze finally landed on Amelia, and it wasn't curious, it was tired. Tina wasn't asking who's right, she was silently asking, who is going to make my day harder? Amelia held up her phone so Tina could see the pass. "We purchased priority," she said. "We're simply boarding in our group." Tina glanced at the screen. For a brief moment, logic had a chance. Then Noah made a small noise, an annoyed sigh, and Evelyn leaned in, voice sharper. "This is ridiculous," she said. "We fly constantly. We spend a lot of money. I do not have time for this." There it was. Not evidence. Pressure. And Tina's eyes flicked to the growing line behind them. People shifting. People watching. A few phones angled slightly upward, not filming yet, but ready. Tina did the math that too many people do in customer service. The math isn't right versus wrong. The math is quiet versus loud. Evelyn was loud, confident, the kind of person who would complain for pleasure. Amelia was calm, polite, the kind of person who looked like she could be talked into being reasonable. So Tina made the decision her nervous system wanted, not the decision policy wanted. "Ma'am," Tina said to Amelia, voice smooth, "for the sake of keeping boarding on schedule, could you just let them go ahead? It's only a few minutes." Only a few minutes. The most expensive lie in public life. Because it's never only the minutes. It's what those minutes teach. It teaches the loud person that volume works. It teaches the quiet person that rules are optional, if the other person is annoying enough. And it teaches the child standing beside you that her place in the world is negotiable. Amelia felt Lila's hand squeeze tighter, and in that squeeze was something that made Amelia's stomach drop. Lila wasn't just nervous. She was shrinking. This was no longer about a boarding pass. It was about a system doing what it always does when it's stressed. It doesn't protect the fair. It rewards the exhausting. And if you've ever wondered why the world seems to bend toward the people who make you tired, it's because in moments like this, human brains don't choose what's right. They choose what's easiest to survive. In psychology, they call it avoidance of discomfort. Our instinct to dodge conflict, to dodge complaints, to dodge the person who looks like they'll make a scene. Tina wasn't necessarily thinking, Evelyn is right. Tina was thinking, Evelyn is trouble. And a calm woman with a child? A calm woman feels solvable. So the calm woman becomes the sacrifice. The line moves, the day stays on schedule, and the wrong thing becomes normal, because it was convenient. Amelia looked at Tina, then at Evelyn, then down at Lila's face, and she realized something with startling clarity. In places like this, the system doesn't ask who paid, it asks who will punish me if I don't give them what they want. And right now, Tina was treating Evelyn like a threat, and Amelia like an inconvenience. Tina's tone stayed polite, but her posture shifted. It was subtle, just a straightening of the shoulders, a tightening around the mouth, the kind of change you see when someone stops helping and starts managing. "Ma'am," Tina said to Amelia, "I need you to cooperate so we can keep this process moving." Amelia didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She simply held her phone up again, like a fact that refused to disappear. "We are cooperating," she said evenly. "We're in the correct group. We purchased priority." Evelyn let out an exasperated sigh, loud enough for the people behind them to hear. "Oh my God," she muttered, turning slightly toward the line like she was collecting witnesses. "Some people just need attention." Noah finally looked up from his tablet and added, with the casual cruelty of a child who's never been corrected, "Can we just go? This is taking forever." Lila's shoulders folded inward like she was trying to become smaller. Amelia felt it. That quiet shift in a child's body when excitement turns into embarrassment, when a simple moment turns into a stage. Tina glanced past Amelia to the jet bridge, then back to the growing line, then back to Evelyn's face. The scanner in Tina's hand beeped as someone else tried to board on the side. Time was moving. Pressure was building. And then Tina said the sentence that changes everything in places like this. "Okay," she said, voice lowering. "Here's what's going to happen." That's when the conversation stopped being a disagreement and became a command. "If you refuse," Tina continued, "I can remove you from the boarding sequence for this flight." Amelia's eyes narrowed slightly. Not angry, focused. "Remove us?" she repeated. Tina nodded once, brisk. "Yes, I can deny boarding for non-compliance, and I can document it as a passenger issue." Document it. That word landed heavier than any insult, because insults fade, but records don't. Amelia had seen what documented meant in other systems, hospitals, schools, courts. Once something gets written down the wrong way, it follows you. It becomes a shadow you didn't earn. Lila looked up at Amelia, eyes wide now, not with excitement, but fear. "Mom?" she whispered, barely audible under the airport noise. That single word cracked something in Amelia's chest. Because in that moment, Lila wasn't thinking about boarding groups or policies. She was thinking, "Are we in trouble? Are they going to take our trip away?" Amelia kept her voice calm for Lila's sake, but she turned her body slightly, placing herself between Lila and the adults. "Tina," she said, using the supervisor's name on purpose, "are you telling me you'll keep a child from boarding because we won't hand our paid service to someone else?" Tina's jaw tightened. "I'm telling you," she said, "we do not have time for conflict at the gate. If you can't be flexible, I'll have to mark it. And once it's marked, it's out of my hands." Out of my hands. That was the oldest trick in bureaucracy. Do harm, then blame the machine. Evelyn's lips curled just slightly. Not a smile. A victory she didn't have to admit out loud. "See?" she said softly, almost sweetly. "Just be reasonable." Amelia stared at Tina for a beat. She wasn't looking at the scanner anymore. She was looking at Amelia like Amelia was the problem that needed to be solved. And Amelia realized the stakes had quietly changed. This was no longer about losing priority boarding. This was about being labeled, being flagged, being made into the kind of person the system could dismiss in the future with one click. Because once you're a passenger issue, you're not a person anymore. You're a file. Lila's hand tugged at Amelia's sleeve again, small and desperate. "It's okay," Lila whispered, trying to be brave. "We can just wait." And that's the moment that gets people, because the child starts negotiating away her own dignity just to stop the tension. Amelia took a slow breath. She could feel her pulse, steady but strong, like a metronome. She could also feel the eyes on them now, people watching, some annoyed, some curious, a few already holding phones at chest level, ready to turn a family's pain into content. Tina leaned in, voice quieter, like she was offering a final kindness. "I'm trying to help you," she said. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." There it was again. Not what is right, what is easier. And this is why records are the system's sharpest weapon. Because they don't have to scream. They just have to threaten to misname you. They don't have to hit you. They just have to say, "I can write you down as the problem." And most good people, most polite people, fold right there. Because they're not afraid of losing an argument. They're afraid of being seen as the kind of person who causes trouble. Amelia looked at Tina, then down at Lila, then back up at the scanner. And in that split second, she made the choice every parent, every guardian, every decent adult eventually faces in public. Do you surrender to keep the peace? Or do you stand your ground and risk being punished for it? And if you're watching this, and you've ever been in a moment like that, at an airport, at a school, at a workplace, listen closely. Because there are 5 sentences that can keep you from being pushed into a corner. 5 sentences that stay respectful and still keep your spine intact. First, can you confirm what my boarding pass shows right now? Second, if there's an issue, I'd like the next supervisor above you immediately. Third, I'm willing to cooperate, but please note this is not a voluntary change. Fourth, may I have your full name and employee ID for my record? And fifth, the one that stops the intimidation cold when they start throwing around threats. Is this a safety directive or a customer service decision? I need you to clarify before I comply. Those sentences aren't rude. They're not aggressive. They're simply what happens when you refuse to let someone rewrite the truth because it's convenient. Amelia lifted her chin slightly, not to challenge, to anchor. And she spoke again, calm as ever, because she understood something Tina didn't. When someone threatens your record, you don't get louder, you get clearer. And what Amelia said next would decide whether this ended as a quiet humiliation or the start of a formal complaint that nobody at that gate saw coming. Amelia heard herself breathing, slow, measured, like she was counting down in her head the way she would before doing something that mattered. Tina was still standing there, headset buzzing, scanner in hand, eyes flicking between the line, the jet bridge, and the woman who had decided she deserved what wasn't hers. Evelyn's face was calm now, almost pleased, like the argument was already over. And Lila looked like a candle in wind. Her chin trembled just slightly. Her fingers were still wrapped around the phone, but the grip had changed. It wasn't proud anymore. It was desperate, like she was holding on to proof that she hadn't imagined it, that they really did belong here. Around them, the airport did what airports do. It watched. A couple of people stared too long, then looked away like they didn't want to get involved. Someone whispered to someone else. A phone lifted, not high, just enough, half filming, half threatening. Amelia could feel the moment turning, not into a policy dispute, into a public spectacle. And she knew what that kind of spectacle does to adults. It embarrasses them. But she also knew what it does to children. It brands them. It teaches them that when something unfair happens, everyone will look and still do nothing. Amelia lowered her phone, not because she agreed, because she was making a different calculation. She leaned down to Lila's level and kept her voice low, warm, private, like a blanket in the middle of a storm. "Hey," she said softly, "look at me." Lila's eyes met hers. They were glossy, but she was holding it together the way kids do, by sheer will and a swallowing motion that breaks your heart if you notice it. "We're okay," Amelia whispered. "You hear me? You're not in trouble." Lila blinked fast. "But we paid," she whispered back. "I know," Amelia said, and she meant it so hard it almost hurt. "And you were right to feel excited. None of that was wrong." Lila's lips pressed together. She glanced at Evelyn, then at Tina, then at the line behind them. And then she did the thing that makes adults feel like they failed. She tried to solve it by shrinking. "It's fine," Lila whispered. "She can go. I can wait." Amelia's throat tightened, because Lila wasn't offering kindness. She was offering surrender. A little girl trying to buy peace with her own dignity. Amelia straightened and looked at Tina again. For a brief moment, she wanted to do what her spine demanded, to stand there, unmovable, to force the system to either follow its own rules or expose itself. But then she looked at the people watching, at the phones, at Lila's face. And Amelia made a choice that only a real adult understands. Sometimes you don't win the argument. You save the child. "Okay," Amelia said, her voice flat but controlled. "We'll step aside." Evelyn's eyebrows lifted in satisfied surprise. "Oh, thank you," she said, as if Amelia had just agreed to share gum, not surrender something she'd paid for. Noah smirked and returned to his tablet like the world had been corrected. Tina exhaled, relief softening her shoulders. The line moved again. The machine kept running. But Amelia did not look relieved. Not even close. She took Lila's hand and guided her a few steps away from the scanner, away from the spotlight. And as they moved, she could feel Lila's whole body trembling with something she didn't have words for. Not anger, not sadness. Confusion. The kind children carry when the rules they were taught don't match the world they're living in. They waited. Not long, just long enough to feel it. Just long enough for Lila to watch Evelyn and Noah disappear down the jet bridge, with their heads high, like they'd earned something. Just long enough for Lila to understand the lesson the system had accidentally taught. Then Tina called, "Next, please." And Amelia guided Lila forward again, calm on the outside, bracing on the inside. They scanned. The device beeped, the gate opened, the jet bridge swallowed them up. The noise changed immediately. Less open air, more echo. A long, narrow tunnel of fluorescent light leading to the aircraft door, like a corridor into a different version of reality. Lila walked beside Amelia without speaking. Her steps were smaller than before. Her shoulders were rounded, like she was trying to protect the softest part of herself. Amelia glanced down, hoping for any sign that Lila was okay. Lila didn't look up. Halfway down the jet bridge, Lila's voice finally came. Thin, careful, like she was afraid the question itself might get her in trouble. "Mom?" she whispered. Amelia's heart squeezed. "Yes, sweetheart." Lila paused, and you could hear the gears turning in her mind. A child trying to understand a grown-up world with a child's logic. And then she asked it, not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly. "Was it because of me?" Amelia stopped walking. The jet bridge kept moving around them, people passing, announcements muffled, footsteps echoing. But Amelia stood still like someone had pressed pause on her body. "Because of you?" she repeated gently. Lila nodded, still not meeting her eyes. Her voice dropped even lower. Because I'm not like them?" It wasn't a fully formed sentence. It didn't need to be. The meaning hit Amelia in the chest with the force of a real thing. Because this was no longer about boarding. It was about belonging. It was about a little girl standing in a fluorescent tunnel, wondering if the world would always be easier for other people, and whether the difference was something she could never change. Amelia knelt right there on the jet bridge. People had to step around them. Some glanced, some pretended not to see. Amelia didn't care. She cupped Lila's small face in her hands, steady and gentle, and she made sure Lila heard every syllable. "No," she said. "Listen to me. No." Lila's eyes finally lifted, wet, searching. "You didn't do anything wrong," Amelia continued. "You didn't ask for this. You didn't cause this." Lila swallowed hard. "But she just took it," she whispered. "I know," Amelia said, voice firm now, not loud, just unbreakable. "And I am not letting that be the lesson you carry." She took a slow breath, choosing her words the way you choose medicine, carefully, because the wrong dose can hurt. "Today," she said, "I chose the quiet way forward because I wasn't going to let strangers turn you into a show." Lila's brow furrowed. "But we didn't win," she whispered. Amelia's eyes held hers. "This wasn't the end," she said. "This was the beginning." She brushed a tear from Lila's cheek with her thumb. "Sometimes the bravest thing a grown-up can do is not to fight louder," Amelia said. "It's to protect your heart first, and then fight smarter." Lila breathed in, shaky. Amelia stood, still holding her hand, and as they walked the rest of the way toward the aircraft door, Amelia's face was calm again. But inside her, something had hardened into purpose. Because now, she wasn't just dealing with a rude woman at a gate. She was dealing with a system that had just taught a child she was movable. And Amelia had no intention of letting that lesson stand. Once they were inside the plane, the world tried to pretend nothing had happened. The cabin lights were soft. The air smelled like recycled oxygen and coffee. Flight attendants moved with that practiced calm, smiling as if every passenger was having a good day. People lifted bags, buckled seatbelts, scrolled through their phones. And Lila sat quietly beside Amelia like she was trying not to take up space. Amelia didn't chase the priority back. She didn't storm to the front. She didn't start a public argument at 30,000 feet. Because Amelia wasn't trying to win a moment. She was trying to correct a system. And that requires something most people don't have when they're upset. It requires patience. It requires precision. It requires turning pain into documentation. Meanwhile, the plane pushed back from the gate. The safety video played. The engines rose into a steady roar. And, slowly, the terminal, where everything had happened, became a distant memory behind glass. But Amelia wasn't letting it stay a memory. About 20 minutes into the flight, when the cabin finally settled into that quiet lull, when the drama of boarding had been replaced by the boredom of travel, Amelia reached for her phone. Not to scroll, to record. She opened her notes app and created a new entry. Date, time, gate number, flight number. She typed like she was charting a patient, because in her mind, that's exactly what this was. A system showing symptoms. A moment revealing the disease. She wrote down what Evelyn said, not perfectly word for word, but the meaning, the demand, the entitlement dressed as smoothness. She wrote down what Tina said, especially the part about documenting them as a passenger issue. And then she did something most people never think to do in the moment. She marked the details that make stories hard to deny, the tiny, boring facts. Because facts are what systems respect when feelings don't. A few rows ahead, Tina Lawson walked down the aisle to check something near the front.
Amelia recognized her immediately. The headset was gone now, replaced by the same uniform calm. Tina looked like a completely different person in the air, less rushed, less cornered. Amelia waited until Tina was close enough to hear her without making it a show. Then Amelia spoke quietly. "Excuse me," she said. Tina paused and turned, smile already loading. "Yes, ma'am." Amelia's voice was calm, almost clinical. "I'd like your full name," Amelia said, "and your employee identification number." The smile froze for half a second. Tina's eyes flicked to Amelia's face, as if trying to decide what kind of passenger she was dealing with now. "I'm sorry?" Tina asked. Amelia didn't repeat herself louder. She repeated herself clearer. "I'm requesting your full name," she said, "and your employee ID, for my records." For my records? That was the language of a person who wasn't here to argue. That was the language of a person who knew how accountability works.
Tina's smile returned, thinner this time.
"Is there a problem?"
she asked. Amelia nodded slightly. "There was," she said, "at the gate." Tina glanced around, sensing eyes, sensing attention, sensing the possibility of a scene. Her voice lowered. "Ma'am, we're in flight now," she said. "Whatever happened, we can address it when we land." Amelia's gaze didn't move. "This isn't a conversation," she said gently. "It's a request. Name and employee ID." Tina hesitated, and in that hesitation, you could see it. She understood what this meant. This was no longer emotional. It was procedural, and Tina had been the one who introduced the idea of documentation first. So Amelia was simply accepting the invitation. Tina reached for the badge clipped near her waist and angled it slightly, just enough for Amelia to see. "Tina Lawson," she said. "Employee number is on the badge." Amelia looked at it, then typed it into her phone with a calm that felt almost unsettling. "Thank you," she said. Tina's eyes narrowed. "And why exactly do you need that?" Tina asked. Amelia didn't smile. She didn't threaten. She didn't lecture. She used the same tone she would use if she were explaining a policy to a colleague. "Because you told me you could document me as a passenger issue," she said. "So I'm documenting you as a staff issue." Tina's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Amelia continued, still quiet, still controlled. "I'm also requesting the name of the manager responsible for gate operations at that terminal," she said. "The one you report to." Tina shifted her weight. "Ma'am," she warned, "I was trying to keep things moving. We had a schedule to maintain." Amelia nodded once, as if she'd expected that answer. "I understand schedules," she said. "What I don't understand is why the solution was to remove a paid service from a child and hand it to an adult who demanded it." Tina's eyes flashed. "Your child's still boarded," she said, defensive now. Amelia didn't take the bait. This was no longer about boarding, Amelia said, and her voice sharpened, just slightly.
It was about the threat you made. Tina blinked. Amelia leaned in just a fraction, lowering her voice even further. You told me you could deny boarding and label me as non-compliant, she said. That is not a casual statement. That is a professional threat. Tina's jaw tightened. You're making this bigger than it needs to be, Tina said. And that's when Amelia said the sentence that marks the moment everything shifts. No, she replied. You made it bigger when you tried to put it in a record. A beat of silence. The hum of the engines filled the space between them. Tina looked at Amelia like she was seeing her for the first time, not as a reasonable passenger who could be managed, but as someone who understood the system's language, someone who could speak it fluently. Amelia straightened. I will be filing a formal complaint, she said.
And I'd like the contact information for the person who handles employee conduct reports. Tina held her gaze, searching for some sign that Amelia might back down. But Amelia had already left that version of herself at the gate. This was the other version now. The version that doesn't raise her voice. The version that doesn't beg. The version that turns a moment of humiliation into a file that can't be ignored. Tina finally spoke, voice tight. I'll get you the information after service, she said. Amelia nodded once. Perfect, she said. I'll be ready. And then she turned back to Lila, who had been watching the entire exchange with wide, uncertain eyes. Amelia reached for Lila's hand under the armrest, squeezed it once, and whispered so only Lila could hear. We're not small, she said. We're just quiet. Lila swallowed. And for the first time since the gate, she didn't look like she was shrinking. She looked like she was learning. Because Amelia had just shown her something the world rarely teaches children. Sometimes you don't fight for the moment. You fight for the record. And once it's in the record, the system has to answer. Most people would have stopped there. They would have gotten the name, the badge number, the satisfaction of putting the system on notice. Then they would have waited until landing, filed a complaint, and hoped someone in an office somewhere cared. But Amelia wasn't hoping. She was building a chain. Because Amelia understood something most people learn too late. In places like airports, the truth doesn't travel by emotion. It travels by hierarchy. So she didn't let the moment dissolve into, we'll handle it later. She kept her voice low, but she kept it moving. Who's the operations manager for that gate? Amelia asked Tina. The person with authority over boarding staff. Tina blinked like she hadn't expected Amelia to know the difference between a supervisor and a decision-maker. We have a team, Tina said carefully. There are channels for feedback. Amelia nodded once. That's not an answer, she said. Name, title, and how to reach them. Tina's expression tightened. After service, she repeated. I'll get you the information. Amelia didn't argue. She simply did what adults do when they don't trust promises. She verified. When Tina walked away, Amelia didn't sit back and wait for honesty to arrive on its own. She pressed the call button. A flight attendant appeared a minute later, smile polished, voice soft. Yes, ma'am? Amelia held her phone in her hand, not like a weapon, like a clipboard. I need to speak with the on-duty customer care manager, she said. Or whoever is the highest-ranking service authority assigned to this flight. The attendant's smile flickered. Is there an emergency? Amelia shook her head. No, she said. But there is a formal complaint involving a threat to deny boarding and document a child as non-compliant. I need it recorded properly. The attendant's eyes sharpened at the word threat. Okay, she said, voice dropping. Let me get the lead. A few minutes later, a man appeared.
He had the look of someone who lived in the space between passengers and policy. Clean uniform, calm face, a controlled kind of tired. "Robert Hayes," he introduced himself. "I'm the service lead for today. How can I help?" Amelia didn't give him anger. She gave him structure. She opened her notes and spoke like she was reading a report. "Time, gate, employee name, employee ID," she said. "Paid priority service removed from a minor. Boarding access threatened. Passenger flagged as an issue for refusing an involuntary change." Robert held up a hand gently, like he was trying to slow the train. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm sorry you felt uncomfortable. We definitely want you to have a good experience. We can offer you a voucher." Amelia's face didn't change.
And that's when Robert realized this wasn't a customer looking for compensation. This was a customer looking for accountability. "I'm not asking for a voucher," Amelia said. "I'm asking for a record." Robert blinked. "A record?" "Yes," Amelia replied. "A formal record. Not a conversation, not a note. A report." Robert's posture shifted slightly, the way people shift when they realize the easy route just closed. "Okay," he said carefully. "We can document a service complaint." "Good," Amelia said, "because I'm documenting it as well." Robert nodded once, still trying to keep it smooth. "And I want to apologize," he added. "Sometimes the gate gets chaotic and—" "This wasn't chaos," Amelia said, calm as ever. "This was a decision." Robert's mouth tightened. He glanced down at Amelia's phone, at the precise timestamps, at the clean bullet points. And he tried one more time to steer it toward comfort. "Why don't we just make sure you and your daughter are taken care of for the rest of the flight?" he said. "We can arrange early deplaning, maybe lounge access next time." Amelia waited until he finished, then said the sentence that changed the temperature. "My daughter's name is Lila Monroe." Robert's polite expression stayed in place for half a second. Then his eyes moved, just slightly, like a file opening in his mind. "Monroe," he repeated. Amelia nodded. "Yes," she said. "Monroe." Robert's voice stayed professional, but something in his face went still. "And her father," Amelia continued, still not raising her voice, "is Marcus Monroe." Silence. Not dramatic silence, the kind of silence that happens when a person suddenly realizes they've been speaking to the wrong level of reality. Robert's throat moved as he swallowed. "I see," he said, but his tone said he did not see yet. Amelia didn't enjoy this. She didn't perform it. She simply stated it the way you state a fact the system can't ignore. Marcus Monroe is the one currently reviewing service standards across the airline's partner airports, Amelia said, including this terminal. Robert's eyes widened a fraction, and now his body was doing what his mouth was trying not to do. He was recalculating, fast. But Amelia wasn't done, because this wasn't just about a last name. It was about timing, and timing is power. "There's also something else," Amelia said, as if she were adding the final line to a report. Robert's voice was quieter now. "Yes, ma'am?" Amelia looked at him, steady. "I'm an independent consultant for the Passenger Rights Coalition," she said. "The group that's been reviewing complaint patterns at this airport." Robert's face went pale in a way no voucher could fix. Because now this was no longer a family issue. It was a compliance issue. This was no longer a rude moment at a gate. It was a documented pattern under review. Robert's hands opened slightly, palms out, like he was trying to place the situation gently back on the table. "Dr. Carter," he said, and that was the first time he used her title. I want to handle this correctly. Amelia nodded. Then start by writing it correctly, she said, because the way you write it decides what happens next. Robert took a slow breath. His voice changed, less smooth, more careful. Can you confirm, he asked, that the employee threatened to deny boarding and mark you as non-compliant? Amelia didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply answered like a witness. Yes, she said, and I have the time noted. Robert nodded again, faster now. And you're saying the paid priority service was taken from a child and reassigned to another passenger at the gate? Yes, Amelia said, in front of multiple witnesses. Robert's eyes flicked toward the aisle, toward the front, like he could already see the paperwork stacking up. Then he looked back at Amelia and asked, voice low, almost strained, "Why didn't you mention the name earlier?" Amelia's expression stayed calm, but her eyes sharpened. "Because it shouldn't matter," she said. A beat. Then she added quietly, "And that's the point. Now, right here, this is where the story splits. Because it feels good when a powerful name flips the room, but it also exposes something ugly. So let's sit with the question that stings, just for a minute. What if Lila wasn't Monroe? What if she was just Lila Smith? Or Lila Johnson? A normal name on a normal ticket with no shadow behind it. Would Robert still be standing here? Would Tina still be choosing her words so carefully? Would anyone be talking about handling it correctly? Or would this have ended at the gate with a soft, dismissive line, "Ma'am, please cooperate." And then nothing. Just a child learning to shrink, a parent swallowing it, a system moving on. That's why this isn't just a twist.
It's a mirror. Because the real power here isn't money, it's not status, it's a record, placed in the right hands at the right time. And Robert Hayes had just realized something that made his stomach drop. This wasn't going to disappear when the wheels touched the runway. This was going to follow them back to the ground, and straight into the offices where Easy stops working. Marcus Monroe didn't arrive like a superhero. There was no dramatic entrance, no crowd parting like a movie scene. He came in the way real authority comes in, quiet, direct, and already informed. By the time Amelia's phone finished uploading the last note, a message had already moved through the internal channel Robert couldn't outrun. Not a complaint, not customer feedback, an incident report. And now, suddenly, this gate wasn't just a gate, it was a spotlight. A few minutes later, the jet bridge door opened again, not for boarding, for accountability. Marcus stepped into the threshold in a dark coat, no entourage, no smile. He wasn't scanning for attention, he was scanning for damage. He looked first at Lila, not at her clothes, not at her pass, at her face. The small way she held herself, like she was trying to take up less space than she deserved. Then his eyes went to Amelia. And Amelia didn't run to him. She didn't dramatize it. She simply nodded, like two adults acknowledging the same truth. This was no longer about inconvenience. It was about a system that had learned to bully quietly. Robert straightened so fast it was almost painful to watch. "Mr. Monroe," he began, voice careful. "Thank you for coming. We were just—" Marcus held up a hand. Not angry, final. "Start from the beginning," he said, "and don't summarize." That one line changed everything. Because summaries are where people hide. Details are where the truth lives.
Robert glanced at Tina. Tina glanced anywhere except Marcus.
And suddenly, the woman who had been confident enough to threaten a mother and child with a permanent mark on their record couldn't even hold eye contact. Marcus pointed to the nearest screen mounted above the gate. "Pull the camera," he said. Robert hesitated. Marcus didn't. "Now." A staff member tapped into the feed. The monitor flickered, then displayed the gate area from minutes earlier. Amelia, Lila, Tina, Evelyn, Noah. The body language was all there. The leaning in, the pointing, the dismissive wave, the crowd turning into an audience. Marcus watched without blinking, and while he watched, he asked questions like an engineer inspecting a crack in a bridge. Who authorized the reassignment of a paid priority service? No one answered. Marcus turned slightly. "I asked a simple question." Tina's voice came out thin. I made the call to keep boarding moving." Marcus nodded once, like he was writing it down in his head. "Did the passenger pay for priority boarding?" "Yes," Amelia said calmly. "And did you remove it from a minor?" Marcus asked. Tina swallowed. "Yes." Marcus's gaze shifted to Evelyn. "Ma'am," he said, "did you purchase priority boarding for your party?" Evelyn lifted her chin, like she still believed confidence could replace receipts. "I've been flying for years," she said. "I shouldn't have to." Marcus cut her off with a quiet sentence. "This isn't about what you believe you deserve," he said. "It's about what you paid for." Then Noah, her son, scoffed under his breath. "Seriously? It's just boarding." Marcus's head turned slowly, and the air got colder. "No," Marcus said. "It's not just boarding." He looked back at Tina. "Explain why you threatened to flag a child as a passenger issue." Tina's lips parted. It's standard language for non-compliance," she said quickly. "If someone refuses a directive..." Marcus stepped closer, just one pace. "Was it a safety directive?" he asked. Tina froze. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Answer the question." Tina's eyes flicked to Robert as if he could save her. He couldn't. "No," she admitted. "It was a service directive." Marcus nodded, and then he said a sentence that landed like a stamp on a document. "Then it was not your place to threaten anyone's record," he said. "That is a misuse of authority." He turned to Robert. "You were aware of this happening at your gate?" Robert's throat tightened. "I was notified after," he said. "I tried to de-escalate." "With a voucher," Marcus finished. "Not mocking him, diagnosing him." Robert went quiet. Marcus looked around the gate area, at the staff, at the passengers watching like it was entertainment. "This is how trust breaks," Marcus said. "Not with violence, with convenience." He glanced at the monitor again. "This wasn't a mistake," he continued. "This was a choice. A choice to reward the loudest person in the room and penalize the quietest." He paused. And when he spoke again, it wasn't personal. It was policy. "Tina Lawson," Marcus said, "effective immediately, you are removed from gate operations. Your badge access will be suspended pending review." Tina's face drained of color. "Mr. Monroe, please," she started. Marcus didn't argue. He didn't negotiate. He simply kept going. "Robert Hayes," he said, "you'll file a full incident report within the hour. Not tomorrow, not after the flight. Within the hour, with names, timestamps, and footage attached." Robert nodded fast. "Yes, sir." Marcus turned to Evelyn. "And you," he said, calm as ice, "will not be boarding this flight." Evelyn's eyes widened. "What? You can't do that.
You have a seat, Marcus corrected, not a license to take from a child. Evelyn's voice rose. This is ridiculous! Marcus didn't flinch. This is accountability, he said. And you're done here. Noah's mouth fell open. You're kicking us off over a pass? Marcus looked at him for a long beat.
I'm removing you for behavior, he said. The pass was just the excuse. Then he turned back to Amelia, and for the first time his voice softened, not in weakness, but in purpose. Dr. Carter, he said, I'm sorry my system put your daughter in that position. Amelia didn't ask for drama. She didn't ask for revenge. She said the only thing that mattered. She needs to know she didn't do anything wrong, Amelia replied. Marcus nodded once. Then he looked down at Lila. His voice lowered. You didn't do anything wrong, he told her. You were treated wrong. And we're going to fix that. And that's the difference between punishment and justice. Punishment humiliates. Justice corrects. Justice documents. Justice cuts the habit at the root, the habit of choosing easy over right, especially when the person being pushed is too small to push back. Marcus didn't come to save a name. He came to repair a standard. And once a standard is repaired in public, it becomes a warning in private. Because from that moment on, every person at that gate knew one thing for sure. A child's dignity was no longer negotiable for the sake of time. The thing about moments like this is, everyone remembers the punishment, the apology, the correction, the part that makes adults feel like balance has been restored. But that's not what stays with a child. What stays is the moment before justice arrived, the moment they were treated like something movable, like something small. So when everything finally settled, Amelia didn't celebrate. She didn't turn Lila into a symbol. She turned her back into a little girl. They were seated on the plane, the engines humming low and steady. Lila stared at her hands, quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. Amelia leaned closer. Where are you right now? On the plane, Lila said. No, Amelia whispered. Inside. Lila swallowed, tight. Amelia nodded. Okay, then we fix that. With truth. Here's what most adults get wrong. We teach children to be good, to be easy, to not make trouble. But sometimes good just means quiet while being pushed aside. This was no longer about boarding. It was about dignity. You did nothing wrong, Amelia said. But they said I was slowing people down, Lila replied. They said that because it helped them, not because it was true. Lila hesitated. Was it because of me? Not about the pass, not about the seat, about worth. Amelia's voice stayed calm. It was because you were quiet, and quiet people are easier to move. That's all. Lila looked up. So I should be louder? No, Amelia said gently. You should be right. Right means you don't have to shout to exist. Right means you don't have to shrink to be polite. Right means you can say no without becoming a problem. This was yours, Amelia said, tapping the pass. You're allowed to keep what belongs to you. And if you ever give something up, it should be your choice. What if they get mad? Then they get mad, Amelia replied. Your job is not to protect someone else's comfort by losing yourself. Lila nodded. Small, but strong. That's what healing looks like sometimes. Not applause, not victory. Just a child remembering she has a spine. And if you've ever been told to move just to keep things smooth, you aren't difficult. You weren't wrong. You were just quiet in a world that rewards noise.